It's 40 years since the world was captivated by two American astronauts walking on the surface of the moon. The Apollo 11 mission is being celebrated and remembered around the world, from Houston to Parkes in central West New South Wales. That was where most of the television pictures of the historic event were relayed from and broadcast via the ABC to a worldwide audience estimated at 600 million. Mike Sexton reports.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It's been 40 years since Neil Armstrong became the first human to set foot on the moon, and for a group of Australians involved in the Apollo 11 mission, there's an understated sense of pride at helping make the moment happen.
Roger, Tranquility, we copy, over.
We couldn't get off the ground in 1903, and here we are 66 years later walking on the moon. It's a great turnaround.
Australia's involvement in the space program centred on a series of radio telescopes built by the CSIRO. The largest is at Parkes in central western New South Wales, which was built in 1961 to survey the heavens for extraterrestrial radio signals.
The centre of our Milky Way galaxy passes directly overhead from here, and so we get to see the richest and most interesting parts of the galaxy.
In 1968, NASA asked the CSIRO to monitor its planned lunar mission through Parkes and other telescopes at Honeysuckle Creek and Tidbinbilla outside Canberra.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
By the time Apollo 11 blasted off the following year, the technicians and scientists in Australia were ready.
I was concerned with a radio receiver that had been provided by NASA, and I worked with them to install that. In fact, a duplicate system. We had two systems, so in case there was a breakdown in one chain.
Neil Fox Mason was a fitter on the New South Wales Railways before answering a job advertisement that saw him become a jack of all trades at the Parkes facility.
My job on the day of the landing, I was in control of the telescope, and I was in charge of the pointing at the moon. And my job was to point the telescope to get the best signal we could.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
When the lunar module touched down, the Australian tracking stations weren't expecting to be needed for several hours because the astronauts were scheduled to rest before moving onto the moon's surface. But Neil Armstrong threw a spanner in the works by deciding to come out early.
The moon was still 7 hours from rising, and so all the work in getting the telescope configured and ready to receive the signals from those few hours when they were on the moon and doing the moonwalk looked like it was going to be all in vain.
You're looking good here.
However, Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin took several hours preparing for their moonwalk, during which the Parkes telescope was tipped to its maximum angle so it could receive signals the moment the moon appeared over the horizon. But there was a quiet panic as strong winds lashed the dish while it was in this vulnerable, extended position.
Listening to bells and whistles and looking at motor currents and all the rest of the things, all the alarms that were going off.
There were two sharp gusts that actually slammed the dish back against its zenith axis motors and caused the tower to shudder and sway. But the director of the observatory, John Bolton, held his nerve. He told his guys to stay on it. And so just as the moon began to rise at the Parkes telescope, Aldrin switched on the TV camera.
And we're getting a picture on the TV.
The pictures were being broadcast via a radio telescope in California before a decision from Houston to switch to Australia.
All stations, we have just switched video to Honeysuckle.
There's one of the American operators there who probably been working on this stuff for a long time, and he looked at it and he said with great understatement, "Wow, How about that?
11 Houston, definition is pretty good on our monitor here.
Honeysuckle Creek broadcast Armstrong's first steps to an estimated audience of 600 million, or 1/5 of the world's population. 10 minutes later, Parkes took over the coverage, and the pictures were so clear that NASA stayed with them for the rest of the broadcast.
Oh, yeah, they were very elated with all the quality of the film, you know. These days it probably looks grainy, as they say, but those days it was very good.
It was absolutely magic, yeah. It's one of the greatest events in history, I think.
40 years on, people still remember where they were when they saw the pictures from the Sea of Tranquility via Parkes.
I can remember sitting on the bare floor of the school watching it on TV.
I was sitting outside with a smoke, listen to it. Yeah, it was good.
At Parkes this past weekend, memories were being shared as the CSIRO opened the telescope to celebrate Australia's role in the Apollo 11 mission.
Can you help put Man America on, put the hideout on?
5 of the men who were there in 1969 gathered to inspect the facility one more time. Although the control room has been rebuilt, the 64-metre dish remains as it was during the Apollo missions and is now used by a new generation of scientists from Australia and abroad.
We judge the projects on their merits. If we think the projects are good, we will give them the time. We don't charge them for it. They just come and use it and do their world-leading astronomy.
When the Parkes telescope was built in 1961, President Kennedy hadn't even issued his challenge to land a man on the moon. Between that speech and Neil Armstrong's footstep, it's been estimated in various ways 400,000 people made the Apollo 11 mission a success, including Neil Mason and David Cook.
We were a multi-talented mob, we all working together.
I did go down out of the tower and around after it all over. The moon was up in the sky, and I did look up there and think, wow, you know, there's 33 people up there, and we've helped put them there.
Mike Sexton with that report.